Hello, everybody. I'm admitting everyone into the meeting.
Are you done with the hummus?
No,
I'm not gonna get any of it done.
yes, you will.
Here we go. Mark, I'm loving the retro pennants.
Yeah,
I'm admitting all these people coming in here. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, nice baseball room, Mark.
yeah, that's like the weak side. The strong side is that's
Oh, I love it.
Oh, my goodness.
of a satchel page print and some magazine covers and
Oh, my
some
Lord, I love it.
baseball signed photos. But this is the easiest way to make the desk work. So that's what you get.
That's one advantage of being here in our houses. We can see all these baseball debris that we all have.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I feel like people should just maybe sell their background photos so that people could, just have like a row of Hannes Wagner cards or something behind them.
I don't have any memorabilia, so I put a college behind me.
Yeah, I'm in the music room, so I've deliberately not made this look like a boys' club, but this is music room here.
Well, this is
Like most of you, I have a wife.
this is my office, which Jane and I share. And she actually works in this office more than I do because I don't really work anymore. But so she uses it for work, but I basically have all the walls.
I'm gonna wait another minute and then we'll start.
Hi.
That's the Hiroshima Tigers, correct?
Hanshin Tigers.
Hanshin.
Yeah.
Hiroshima is a carp. Got it. Right.
Yeah, Hanshin, they're first, they've been first place all year long. They're just, yeah, they're trying to hang on, keep their arch rivals, the Giants, from catching up. Giants are about 2 games behind.
Hey, Neil, good to see you.
How are you, Kit?
I'm doing well, thank you. Better than our friends YouTube are doing.
Yes. So any idea when the border will ever be opened again?
That's what the owner of our club is asking because they're drawing 200 in Hillsboro, Oregon every night. There was some talk of the 21st of this month, but because the numbers are getting larger, the cases are growing in the US with and we're now vaccinated. I think we're 69% are double vaccinated. So we're way ahead. I don't know. I'm not very optimistic right now.
Yeah. It's ironic because last year US was having problems, but Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, they were doing great. Now on Monday, the Korean League shut down, suspended until August 9th. And the Taiwanese League, they were suspended from May 17th. They reopened on Tuesday, but it's really hard to figure out where this thing's going. How's it going to affect the Olympics, the baseball Olympics? I don't know.
Well, the Olympics, they're not going to have any spectators. So that's,
No.
that's the,
I think
decision they
they
made earlier
allowed-
this week.
They allow Japanese spectators,
Hmm.
but nobody
Oh,
from
okay.
out of the country.
They're gonna use an imaginary ball.
We really only care about the
Balls, the
eyeballs
problem.
on TV for the Olympics anyway.
It's shadow ball, shadow ball.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what, they're gonna play shadow ball.
What
The
is
34
that?
Cardinals are the favorite to win the gold.
Yeah. Okay, so I can admit a few more people here. And then we'll get going.
It's kind of ironic because I have a Zoom meeting, Washington State Sports Collectors Club meeting, same time, but I'm gonna stick with you guys.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so welcome, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name's Bob Russin. I'm the chapter president. For those that do know me, take a good look. Okay, all right. What we're going to try to do, is I really want to make this meeting. A lot of times when we introduce ourselves before a meeting, we have a perfunctory introduction because we need to get on to the presentation. For tonight, this is the presentation. So, and I especially want to welcome new members or people that don't ordinarily come to our meetings in one place or another. Okay. And I'm just going to start off by, I just want to introduce the other chapter leaders. I'm going to turn to Tip, let him speak. And then I see that Tim Herlick is here. I'll let him speak. And I don't see Mark Brunke. If he shows up, I'll let him speak. And then what I'd like to do is just let everyone have a chance to speak. And this is the time for you to opine on research you're doing, talk about your interests, talk about what teams you root for. And if you have a special baseball memento or something that you'd like to show off or to everyone, the advantage is you don't have to card it in. You can just point the camera to it and show us what you have. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn the next speaker to Tip.
Thanks, Bob. My name is Tip Wanhoff. I know many of you. I organize and chair the meetings in Washington State when we have meetings here. I am in Tacoma, and I wanted to share with you the results of the survey that I sent out to chapter members several weeks ago now. It was a quick survey. We're trying to get a feel for what the future of our meetings will look like, and so I'll summarize the results for you now. So one of the questions was, how likely are you to attend an in-person meeting when it's safe to do so? For example, this fall in our annual Seattle-based meeting, and 55% of respondents said they'd be likely to attend, and only 17% said they'd be unlikely to attend. So that was the result of that question. How likely, when it's safe to do so, how likely would you come to a Seattle meeting? 50% of respondents said they would come to a Seattle meeting. Another 27% said it'd depend on the agenda and weather. How likely would you attend a Vancouver, BC area meeting? 10% of respondents said they'd be likely to attend one. 60% say they'd be unlikely, with 30% dependent. How likely would you attend a Portland meeting? 35% would attend a Portland area meeting, 40% unlikely. The next question asked, it was a multiple guess or multiple choice answer, and it said, where else in the Washington, Oregon, or British Columbia area would you be most likely to attend a future meeting? And I had several regions listed. The number one response was none of the above. And then the second, that was 28%. The next highest was 25% said, I'm only interested in attending in our traditional meeting locations. So over 50% of respondents were interested in basically, from what I can glean from this, sticking with the current geographic meeting locations. And the next question was, if the location for our next in-person meeting were to have a vaccination requirement, would that matter to you? And 70% of respondents said a vaccination will actually improve their chances of attending a meeting, which is really interesting. Only one respondent said a vaccination would reduce the chance of attendance. And then another 27% said a vaccination requirement would make no difference.
I think that member passed away.
Jeez.
And then the final question was a question that asked, once it's safe to do so and we can go back to in-person meetings, should we continue to do some blend of in-person and virtual? And overwhelming 72% said they'd like to see a variety of in-person meetings mixed in with some virtual ones like the one we're having tonight for ease of access and other things. And I think that having this technology really has paid off in a lot of ways. So that's the results of the survey. Thank you for everyone who filled it out. We did have, I think there was 50 respondents. So that's pretty good turnout. I did want to share one piece of memorabilia. It's just this book. It's We Are the Ship. There it is. It's an illustration book of Negro Leagues by Kadir Nelson. And this is my introduction to Kadir Nelson, who has been featured on other art, like the cover Rolling Stone from last summer. And I think he's just a wonderful artist, and you see him on the New Yorker quite often and other places. So that's what I wanted to share. If you haven't checked out that book, it's a fun one to flip through. Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Tip. I'm going to ask Tim Herlick to speak next.
Okay, I will. I'll try to look into the camera instead of into the screen. So I'm the treasurer of the chapter, and our treasury has been holding for several years at $290. We haven't had to go out and solicit, but we haven't been spending any money either. So just so you know, we are very solvent in our chapter. It's good to know, right? And Bob, did you want me to talk about just, general?
Yeah,
things, or
go ahead and say whatever you want to. I'm going to ask Mark Armour to speak after you.
I'm okay. So, no offense to Kit Krieger, but I hope that the border stays closed until August, the evening of August 15th. That's when the Toronto Blue Jays are supposed to leave Seattle, because I'd like to attend the game and be the home team, against the Blue Jays here in Seattle for a change.
I know Trudeau's aunt. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we would like to be the home team once in a while. So, but otherwise, the gates are open. I've been to a few games, and the Mariners are making it interesting, and we'll see how long that goes. As far as memorabilia, I'm gonna do a little walk back. You probably see these old library card catalogs. I don't know if you can see where I am, but a neighbor of mine is a librarian at Seattle University, and when they were liquidating the catalogs for free, she said, "Do you have any interest in them?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, because I do have some baseball cards that, would have a good place for them." I just picked out Art Fowler, a Canadian, I think, right?
Oh,
No, that's the wrong.
Dick Fowler was a Canadian.
Dick Fowler was the Canadian.
Art Fowler was Southern.
So that's what that's what I have in my my memorabilia room here. dating back to, I've got some cards back in the 1940s, but mainly from the early 50s on. And I also have, I'll just, since Tip showed a book, I'll show a book here as well. This is the Who's Who in Baseball, I think 1933 edition, which is kind of the holy grail, I'm told, of Who's Who in Baseball. This was handed down to me, just like a lot of the early baseball cards, from cousins that were much older than me. Now, you know, the book is missing its dust jacket, so that really reduces the value some. But I think what's worse, my cousins were not baseball fans quite to the degree that I was. And I think they decided that if a player was deceased, they would draw a line, you know, diagonally across the biography. So I don't know if you can see Babe Ruth, for example, has a blue ink line. Oh, I should be drawn from one end, one corner of the page to the other. And I would think that probably affects the value a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's quite a good book otherwise. So I've got that in my bookshelf. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I don't think, Mark Brunke, are you here? I don't see you. Okay, since we have SABR President Mark Armour with us, I'm going to ask Mark to go next.
Okay. I don't need to jump the line, but I will accept that, I guess. Glad to see everyone's faces here. I've been to one Mariners game this year, and several of you accompanied me. It was great. It was a lot of fun a few weeks ago. I'm guessing that Seattle is more opened up than it was then. We had both a small crowd and all of the bars and restaurants in the neighborhood closed, just about. However, I am going Friday. I am meeting my friend, Dan Levitt, who many of you know, who lives in Minneapolis. We are meeting in Denver. We're spending the weekend in Denver. Not the All-Star game weekend, but the weekend after the All-Star game. We will be there for a little bit more than 2 days, and we are going to 2 games against the Dodgers. We will not see Trevor Bauer. We might also not see Clayton Kershaw. I was hoping to see Kershaw because I figured that since they're the first 2 games after the break, that there would be a good shot at seeing Kershaw. He was put on the IL just before the All-Star break. He is due to come back, or he could come back off the IL before the series starts, and he's supposedly okay. So I'm crossing my fingers that I could see Kershaw. That would be a lot of fun. I had a question for Tim H. About the Treasury. And maybe this is a question for Tip as well. Is Bill Woodward's university location still something that is something we? I guess the question I should ask is Bill still happy with us?
Bill can answer that.
Because that's a good reason for our treasury, probably. Anyway, is he? Have anybody seen him recently?
It's right here. He's logged in.
I saw myself in the mirror shaving this morning. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Bill. How are you?
Hey, Mark. Good to see you. The question is not so much am I still interested in the group, is the group still interested in me? I almost certain that there is no change to the availability of the space when things are reopened, and I think that will happen by fall. We're going to have students back on campus, provided they are vaccinated. Classes will resume mostly all in person, with a few, volunteers doing some remote stuff. This is sort of typical of the 3 universities in the city. And my guess is that those guest spaces will will be available. Don't know that yet. Haven't been asked yet to check. But yeah, I think that's a great relationship. History department is happy to be the official sponsor as long as I'm around, which I am. So yeah, Mark, I enjoy the
we love your space.
yeah.
At least I do. So I'd be happy to answer any questions people have about SABR, current SABR governance. Just for those of you who don't know, I'm the president of the board of directors, which is not the same thing as being the president, because we have people that run the organization that we pay, and I'm not one of them. We are focused, the board just focuses on more long-term stuff and putting up guardrails for the organization. We are the thing we've been wrestling with the past couple of weeks, to give you sort of breaking news, is that the Baltimore Orioles schedule for 2022 became alive this, I think, last week. And we discovered that the Orioles are not going to be at home the weekend that the convention is in Baltimore, which it's basically was a coin flip, right? 50-50. So we are, for those of you who go to conventions, which is a good number of you here, we are contemplating a 11th hour decision to move the date of the convention. And we have a very small window in order to do this, and we only have one possible move that we can make. And Scott is checking with the local chapter to see whether there's any reason not to do that. So hopefully no one has actually made plane reservations for next August yet. But for those of you who went to the convention in 2009, I was not part of government at that point. I think Neil probably was, but in 2009, the convention was in Washington. And we again had a 50-50 chance to get a home game and lost the coin flip. And we bussed to Baltimore. And the bus to Baltimore was kind of a disaster. Like it was stuck in traffic for a long time. And we showed up, we pulled into the Camden Yards parking lot on the buses, and we could hear the anthem being played through the bus windows. And I did not get to my seat until a few batters into the game. So I think most of us want to avoid that from happening, but mostly I think everybody's just so excited about having a SABR meeting, even a local meeting at this point. So that's what I'm hearing from other people too. It's like, yes, Zoom is great, but enough already.
So maybe we
Thank
should
you,
do
Mark.
the Nationals when we're in Baltimore in the summer of 2022.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's not like Major League Baseball announces the schedule. It's more like each team has their schedules and they announce them one at a time. I don't know if the Orioles have officially announced it, but they told SABR. So then Scott immediately called the Nationals and they said, "Oh, we don't have a schedule yet." So I don't know how that all works. I think, I guess it's supposedly possible that the Orioles have a schedule and then they find out 2 weeks later they have to change it. I don't know how it works.
Mark, what they would have at this stage is a draft of the schedule, because it goes to the Players Association around July 1st, and they have a period of time to comment, and it doesn't get finalized until September.
Okay, so we are potentially operating based on a draft. And we've done this before, I believe. The SABR board has been in this situation in the past and have acted based on that. And the draft has always worked out, as far as I know. I don't know if Neil, if you remember this happening, but it seems like it's pretty close. But yeah, we haven't been promised anything.
Or you could go to Philadelphia, up to only about 2 hours north of Baltimore.
Or there's like minor league teams around too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hagerstown and
Fewer than
Frederick and Potomac.
Yeah, the Delmarva Peninsula is wonderful this time of year.
What peninsula?
The Delmarva,
Where the hell is that?
it's Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. It's where Chesapeake Bay is.
Ah.
The eastern shore thereof.
Yeah,
Don't the Ripkins own a bunch of teams?
yeah.
Yeah, it's
The
106
the group
miles.
who owns the Everett Aqua Sox owns the team in Salisbury, Maryland.
Yeah, one
If I-
of those teams, Aberdeen or Bowie or one of them is one of those that got
Bowie.
axed.
One of the things I'd like to say, since you're the president, is as a person who doesn't have the money to travel that far and spend, go back on the heat and all that stuff. I've been back there in the summertime and doing Civil War thing. And the Zoom meetings we've had this year have been fantastic because I've been able to see people I'd never otherwise get to see or even hear. And if you make it strictly those who can afford to go, then the lower income people are basically excluded. That's how I look at it. That if we could do it, if we've done it, the Sons of Union Veterans, we're doing it combo, either in person or with Zoom. And that way, if you hold your sessions where they can go for a fee online, those people want to go and do the in-person thing, which I understand is a lot more exciting. But for us who don't have the money, it means we're just basically excluded. So that's why
I hear you, and I believe that there's an overwhelming consensus from both Scott and the people on the board that the future is going to involve both solutions.
It's called a couple of national groups aligned to it. They call it the hybrid effect, and it's worked pretty well so far.
Right. I mean, I had never heard of Zoom a year and a half ago, so it's not like anyone was deliberately avoiding doing it this way. It's just, I don't think people really realize the power of it.
It didn't exist more than about two years ago.
If only you were one of the initial investors, Mark.
I was not, but if I had known about the China virus or whatever it's called.
Mark, can I ask a related question since you're president here?
Sure.
This is Josh from Eugene. Same kind of idea as I was just asked about. So I'm in Eugene here, and going to Baltimore might be a bigger expense or more time off from work, et cetera. But how, if at all, how much in advance does the board decide on the location? Like, would we know, for example, at some point before we'd have to make a decision about Baltimore 2022, that in 2023 it would be in Seattle or it would be in Denver or somewhere that may be more accessible to the West Coast?
This has varied over the years. It used to be that it would be like 2 years in advance.
Then hotel chains change their policies.
So the issue, the 100% of the issue is that everyone wants to go to a major league game. Okay, if we got rid of that requirement, we could go 10 years out, right? Because we wouldn't care. But because of the major league game thing, what we did for a long time, I think during a lot of the time that Neil was on the board, because I think Neil was on the board for several years, what we used to do is we would essentially pick a city and then find a hotel and get them to save like 4 dates for us. And then when the schedule came out, we would pick one of those 4 dates. And then in more recent years, hotels have said, no, we're going to save 1 date for you. And that's it. And so once that happens, then now we can only go a year out. So that's kind of the dilemma we have. And that's one of the reasons why there are a lot of people who think we should go to places like Chicago more often, because there's 2 teams, and potentially we could go, for example, to Chicago and say, we will sign this deal with you, and we will get 3 conventions, in every other year, and we'll sign up for that right now. And the chances of getting a major league team for all those years is not 100%, but pretty high. So it's a long way of answering your question. which is that I think everybody wishes it was longer. And there's always been an element that I've been part of that says there's a lot of things we can do at a convention that do not involve a major league game, and we should be willing to take that chance and not have that be a fatal problem. But I think it's fair to say that as of now, that opinion is a minority. So I don't think I answered your question, Josh, but it is at least a year in advance, but it's possible that we'll know if we were willing to take some kind of chance. There are people that want to go to Chicago, for example, in 2023, which is the convention after Baltimore. And if we did that, it's possible we could announce that sooner because of the two teams.
Can I kick in response to James Diamond's plea, and back to the notion that if you want to go live at our space at Seattle Pacific, I'm familiar with the technology that allows that hybrid format. That's all I wanted to say. That's doable.
Okay. If there's no, I have a few announcements, so let me get those out of the way. In terms of a Portland area meeting, that's really up in the air. And we like to have one in February. I hope we can. We don't have a real place not locked in like we have it in Bill's library there. So I'll have to let you know about that. I haven't posted this yet, but I have a Zoom meeting arranged for Wednesday, August 25th with Rupert Jones, the ex-Mariner and stuff. And I'll be posting that and letting you know about that. I just blocked that in this afternoon. Okay. And I will show you my special thing here since I have a minute here. I'm going to take you into the next room.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous.
That's right. This is my county stadium seat.
All right.
Okay. And when I see this, I always imagine somebody watching Harvey Haddock's perfect game sitting in this seat. Okay. That's the reason that's the only reason I haven't dragged that into a meeting is that it's too heavy there. But I thought you'd like to see that. Now, if there's anyone else that would like to introduce him or herself, speak up. Now's your chance.
Bob, I'd like to.
Go ahead.
Gary West. I live in Kent, and this is actually the first chapter meeting I've been to in some time, other than the one we had at Safeco Field a few years ago.
Welcome.
Yeah. Bob, I wanted to just, if I may, just talk about
yeah, I know what you go. Go ahead. Yeah.
One of the newest groups in SABR is called the Baseball Reminiscence Group. It's an interest group where we assist with what's called reminiscence therapy for people who have things like Alzheimer's, dementia, memory care, chronic health issues, things like that. We work with them and their providers to just give them time with us to just reminisce about their own baseball memories. It tends to give them a little kind of a pleasant oasis in what they're going through. And what we've been doing, it's been off and on since 2015, but only recently has SABR had a brand new, had an interest group for it. And the chairman of the interest group, maybe a lot of you probably will know the name John Leonidakis. He's a filmmaker. He's done things like Not Exactly Cooperstown and Arnold Hanno, A Century in the Bleachers. He's the chairman of this group. We have people from all over the country in the initial interest group section. And what I wanted to do was just get the word out there that we are around. If you're interested in helping us or know of any facilities or places that would be interested in something we do, we're in contact with folks like Alzheimer's Seattle, memory cafes, and facilities like that. So basically, it's just using baseball to give some of the older folks just some pleasant time with the memories of the game, and it's so much more important now because the game of our youth is further and further fading into the mists of time. But I just wanted to let you know that I'm about the group, and if there's any interest, if you have any questions. The baseball memorabilia I'd like to share here comes from 9 years ago, August 15th, 2012 at Safeco Field. It was Felix's no-hitter and Felix's perfect game, and I was lucky enough to be in the cheap seats for that. So this is my ticket and my scorecard for that day. So that's kind of a nice little memory for me. But anyway, that's kind of my presentation. Not too much there. We have a website, by the way. There's a lot of good information on our website, and it's a long one, but it's SABR Baseball Memories. That's all lowercase, one word spelled out, saberbaseballmemories.org. And our mission statement's there, some information about past activities we've been through and have conducted. And that basically is the gist of what our group is all about.
Thanks, Gary.
Uh-huh.
Would anyone else like to introduce themselves or talk about anything at all? Show some keepsake or anything?
Okay.
Well, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Behind me is the 1906 10th Cavs championship baseball team at Fort Robinson. And, you know, I work on military Negro League history is what I got into. Last year, we published a calendar at the Buffalo Soldier Museum. We sold 300, made over $10,000. And this year, because we got access to the largest private collection of African-American soldier photos playing baseball, to Anthony Powell, we're going to issue a set of unpublished baseball cards of images of Hawaii, the Wreckers, the 9th and 10th Cav, the 24th Infantry in like 1904. And we're going to put these up in a set of like 16 of them and publish them along with a calendar. So the money that goes into the profits goes to our museum, which is based in Tacoma. And so that's what I've been working on, besides burying soldiers and so on. I'm hoping that it'll be a successful. We had a thing online last year. We had like 100 people show up, and we had a couple of pro players, and Rick Riz hosted it. And next year, I think we're going to probably have some other pros. We have Long, you know, the guy was in the 74 World Series. He is involved with this now, probably in our board. And I'm hoping we'll have some more pro players and Seahawks getting involved. That's what I've been doing. And I'm here because of Rick Solomon. And I love SABR. I love everything. I get on the website. I read all the notices. I can't get enough baseball. So thanks a lot for having me.
Welcome aboard.
Oh, hi.
Bob?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Am I on?
Yeah, Mel.
Okay.
You're the long distance champ on this one.
Oh, yeah. It's about 20 of 11 here. But I'm Mel Poplock, and I'm chairperson of the Southwest Florida chapter, but I I spend about 4 or 5 months in Bellevue, Washington every year. And well, actually, I worked spring training for the Boston Red Sox in Fort Myers for the last 22 years. And I still work there, but of course, spring training's over. I'm waiting for 2022. But what I really want to talk about is memorabilia. I've been collecting memorabilia for about, I'm senior here, for about 65 years. And my kids are not interested in it. So I'm going to start winding down, and I found out that there's a Washington State Sport Collectors Association Collectors Show, September 18th. It's a Saturday, and it's going to be at the Linwood Convention Center. I don't know if anybody in your chapter, goes to their meetings or to their collectible shows, but I contracted to have a booth there, and I'm looking forward to it. I have tons of old, rare memorabilia, old sketches, publications, first day covers, pins, sheet music. And here, let's see if does this show? Here's a Carstairs before the internet. These were in bars. And that's how we knew what stores were. I mean, that's just one item. I have just tons and tons of items from the 40s through the 90s. Mostly East Coast, because I've lived on the East Coast for many years. And I went to the game that Ripken broke the record, and I have tons of memorabilia from that game that I'm going to display. Any questions?
That should be a good show because last year, normally they have a summer and a fall show, the Washington State Sports Collectors. So that'll be a good show for you because they skipped it last year. And this will be a new location.
I know, yeah, they got canceled last year.
Yeah, both shows, the summer and winter, summer and fall. So this will be a good show for you. A lot of real collectors who collect, not just people who collect all the new, whatever the trends are, but people who really collect, So, and I'm in the same boat as you. I got to get rid of my stuff because, my daughter doesn't appreciate it. Nobody, all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of cars, but I just got a lot of one-of-a-kind things. One of the interesting things, but I'm not going to sell it. I'm a CPA, and one of the best and most treasured things I have is a signed check made out to the Internal Revenue Service, signed by Ty Cobb.
Wow.
Yeah, not going to sell it. that I'm going to keep. And
How much is it for?
I'll go in an auction, my estate auction.
How much is a check for?
Yeah, how much is the check for?
Well, it's $3,500, but remember, this was, I think about 60 years ago. He made his money in Coca-Cola stock.
General Motors, I think, too. We had a lot of General Motors.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Coca-Cola, though, was his big one.
Is the collector's market? I thought baseball cards and all that stuff are really, people are investing and borrowing money to get into it. It was an expanding market.
Well, it depends. A lot of the new investors are getting into basketball and non-sport stuff. And they're basically you're seeing a lot of people, they're buying something, then selling it to another dealer and then buying it back. So a lot of, just like what happened in the 80s, where people really weren't collecting, they were selling it back and forth. So that's what a lot of times drives up the high value, the high prices. It's collectors selling to other collectors. And, you know, so it's a false market a lot of times. So a lot of times the real valuable stuff, like a lot of us have, you know, a lot of the newer collectors wouldn't even look at it, you know? But
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
my,
NFT.
yeah, my son, he doesn't even know who Ty Cobb is.
Oh my goodness.
Was. He knows Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and that's about it.
I'll see you there. That'll be great.
Oh, okay, good.
I've probably gone to the Washington State shows for the last 25 years, and they're very good shows. You have a lot of vintage sellers. People come up from California. Mark McCrae is a Pacific Coast League guy who always has fantastic stuff. So it's a lot, as you, Robert said, it's a lot more than just modern cards, and it's a lot more than just cards. There's pennants and balls and you name it. If you're into it, it'll be there. And we don't have very many opportunities to even go to card shows here in Washington, since it's kind of it other than the mall shows. So I'm glad to hear that it's coming back.
Yeah, it's going to be September 18th.
Where is Linwood? That's Linwood is north of Seattle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Darn, I never heard of this show. I may try to get up there.
Great show for Coast League fans, because there's lots of marketing people bring Coast League material that you really, I've been to national shows and you don't see the Coast League material at that show, you see it at the Linwood show.
Yeah.
I could say something. Things.
Yes, please.
First of all, this year we are not having research presentations per se. We're having at the convention. There is sort of the 50 best pick a subject things during SABR's 50 years. I presume that next year we will have research presentations, the real thing. And of course, I'm one of the wranglers thereof. So if you're thinking about doing research, you'll be in touch with me or Scott Fistall. Inside baseball on this, I am thinking about submitting a presentation myself. And
Whoa.
I will let you know that I never do any of the blind review. So there's no chance that I'm going to give myself a perfect score. I also wanted to mention last weekend in August, Mark and I think Jeff Bauer as well, and several others are going to Chicago to see the Cubs and the White Sox. I think it is in whatever they call New Comiskey these days.
Cellular Fields, First Cellular Field, something like that.
US Cellular.
US Cellular. Okay.
No, I think you guys are a couple names off. I think it's actually Guaranteed Rate.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Oh,
it might be
yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, this is,
I call it Comiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
I know I'm looking forward to that, and I presume that Mark is as well. It's the Baseball Think Factory chapter. If I guess not, we'll call it a chapter for now. And it's a bunch of people who get together and drink a lot and go to the convention ordinarily. Haven't seen them in a long time, as with most of you guys. I also, let me get rid of my background here for a second. Because I do not do memorabilia per se, but I did remember I had, let's see if you're going to be able to see this. This is the American Scientist, which is the journal of the society called Sigma Xi. It's a scientific research honor society, which I've been a member of for a long time. And I think you can recognize who that might be. right? Robin Roberts. And in the background is the scoreboard of Shibe Park or Connie Mack Stadium, whichever it was called at the time. And so I'm trying to figure out if this is a real game. There are 3 out-of-town scores shown. If this is, well, let me narrow it down. Milwaukee is one of the teams, so it has to be 1953 or later. If you assume that there are only 8 teams, because there's no San Francisco and no LA, they're playing the Brooklyn Dodgers. The other 3 games, account for the other 6 teams. I could not find a single game in which Roberts pitched against the Dodgers and led 1-0 after 5 innings. So it's a made-up game. Now, you may be wondering why a scientific research society would have a picture of Robin Roberts throwing a pitch on the cover. Well, covers are usually related to papers that are within the journal. And the paper that is associated with it is called Predicting a Baseball's Path. And let's see if we can, you can probably maybe read that. And there's a picture of, let's see, that's Roger Clemens. But what's especially interesting is the second author is Dave Baldwin.
Oh,
Is Alan Nathan the author?
No. A. Terry Bayhill,
Barry Bayhill, yeah.
David G. Baldwin, and Jayendran Venkataswaranan, or something like that. This is actually from 2005.
I have his baseball card.
What's that? Oh, okay. I don't think that's the first player from India. But anyway, the closest thing I have to memorabilia.
nice.
Hey, Neil, I have a question for you pertaining to presentations. My presentation was accepted for what would have been last year's convention.
Mhm.
Now, am I going to have to resubmit that because it's
No.
very Baltimore centric?
You're already in. I think
Okay.
there were 3 or 4 people who were in your same boat.
Okay, thank you.
So Scott told you that, Neil?
I think we've told Scott that.
Okay.
No, we agreed. Scott and I all agreed.
Okay.
What, Mark, are you thinking of having me pulling mine?
No, I was just wondering because the I know that the board has essentially told Scott it's your convention. And now that you have your legs under you, because he hasn't really had a convention. The San Diego convention was kind of already in place, by the time he got here, and he didn't really do anything. So I just was wondering, because I don't know what his thinking is. I don't think if he changed anything, it wouldn't be because anything's not working. It's more of a scheduling thing or whatever. I don't know. But I've heard no indication that he is changing, and I just was wondering.
There's a rumor that to align the presentation to the state of the game, each presenter will be given 45 minutes, but only present for 30, and somebody else comes in and finishes for them.
There you go. So I forgot. So if I have a second for my memorabilia, I just got this in the mail the other day. It's a sticker of Dave Parker wearing a t-shirt that says, "If you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys bopping," which is a famous t-shirt that he wore in the Pirates dugout many years ago. And there's a artist, Josie Teller, I think her name is, that was selling these stickers, and I sent away for one. I'm going to put it on my laptop. There you go.
She won the Josh Gibson art card contest as well.
That's right. She's all the rage. But I've stayed out of the art card fad for the most part, just because I just don't need any more stuff to do. However, I like that sticker, so I was persuaded.
I'd like to kick back in with a question that sort of hitchhikes on that cover picture of Robin Roberts, and call out Bart Waldman. I'm kind of curious, Bart, if you have, as a longtime pitcher, a take one way or the other on this controversy about substances and grips and spin rates that's been the kerfuffle this season.
Oh, I have an opinion on everything, as you know, Bill.
I wouldn't want to presume, Bart, but I'm not surprised.
You know, for all of the history of baseball, the rules against foreign substances had to do with having a ball slip out of your hands, either using Vaseline or spit or slippery elm in the old days or KY jelly or something that made a ball slip. Because if you took the spin off the ball and it had lower RPM, the physics of that means it hits the air cushion and drops. And so a spitball would, you know, thrown with a fastball motion would just all of a sudden drop out of nowhere. Essentially what a good split finger pitch does today. And so until probably 2016 or 2017, everything about foreign substances had to do with the ball slipping out of your grip. And it was pretty common knowledge that a pitcher might, you know, grab somebody's pine tar bat on his way to the mound to get a little bit of stickiness on his fingers in order to have better command of his pitches. And then all of a sudden, with all of the technology we have today and the video cameras and StatCast and everything else, spin rate becomes a big issue. And lo and behold, and it's obvious to all of us who study the game, that the more RPM you can put on the ball, the more it's going to break. That's just pure physics. And so as you spin the ball faster and you have a guy who can put more spin on the ball, his ball is going to break more than the guy who has a lower spin rate. And suddenly pitchers are going into their off-season training with video cameras and, you know, spin doctors who try to get them better grip and to improve their spin rate. And teams begin trading for pitchers who have higher spin rates, even though they've never been successful before, because they think they can somehow harness that spin rate. And so suddenly the incentive for a pitcher is to grip the ball more instead of having it slip out of his fingers. And, you know, baseball never worried about a guy being able to grip the ball. Batters wanted you to grip the ball better because it means you probably weren't going to hit him as often. And you'd command your pitches better and not be throwing wild pitches and balls that were going to plunk the hitters. But it got out of control. I mean, like anything like that, you know, can be abused, and pitchers were abusing it. And, you know, I don't know how true it is because I've been, you know, retired from the Mariners for 4 years and out of the loop on a lot of this. But, you know, I've heard of pitchers using this stuff, and I've read the articles about, all the different things that, you know, that more advanced chemistry is beginning to concoct, and teams having scientists on staff to invent, you know, super glues that pitchers could use on the mound. So baseball had to step in and do something about it. And I'm glad they did what they did. You know, although a few pitchers have whined a little bit about it, there's really not a lot of repercussion from it. We have a very, very small sample size so far, but in the month or so that the new rule has been in place, lo and behold, you know, batting averages have started to climb a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know if that's cause and effect or not. The samples are too low. But I'm glad that they're saying, okay, you know, no foreign substances means no foreign substances. I hope we get past the idea where umpires have to inspect everybody coming on and off the field, but we'll get there.
The average gets
That's my thought.
better as the weather gets warmer. Anyway,
So to just to piggyback on what Rob said, the Rob Arthur had a story at Baseball Prospectus a week or so ago, and the spin rate is way down as well in the last like 4 weeks. I mean, it's only 4 weeks, but it's really huge. I mean, it's back to where it was in 2016. So I don't think there's any question that people were using stuff.
Yeah. And I've heard estimates that 70 to 80% of the pitchers were using something.
Right.
my question is, if foreign substances aren't allowed, how do they allow Lena Blackburn's rubbing mud?
Yeah. That's from the USA. That's from Delaware. That's why. It's not foreign.
No, it's from New Jersey.
I think it's interesting though that when you see like certain pitchers that have really come on in the last 6 weeks, I know I'm a big Luis Castillo fan, and I look at him and he's really gone back to mechanics and seeing how he's pitching. And I think what we're going to see is those pitchers that have the really good stuff, they're going to rise.
Yeah.
And the guys that were kind of cutting corners, the guys that were looking, the 3-year player that were looking to stay in the league 6, those might have been the guys that were using the stuff. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see that those pitchers rise. That's just my take.
Hey, excuse me. So my computer clock says 7:59. I'm not going to cut us off, but we only have this till 8. So I don't know if SABR, if our contract with Zoom is going to get us cut off or not. So if all of a sudden it goes blank, it's not because of a big problem with that. Would you like to do this again sometime reasonably soon?
Yes.
Okay. I'll set one up maybe for sometime in September.
The invitation I got said 7 to 9.
I'm sorry?
The invitation that I got when I clicked on it, that went on my calendar, is from 7 to 9.
I did it. I don't know. Maybe it'll go for that. I think that's the East Coast stuff there. But I'm not going to cut us off. So I'm just letting you know that it's not going to. If all of a sudden it goes sour, it's 8 o'clock now by my computer clock here. Just letting you know. Go.
Pretty sure that paid Zoom accounts don't do that cutoff.
Yeah.
It should be unlimited.
Yeah, we should be okay. We should be
Good. Good.
And one that
Good.
15 extra minutes.
I have a mystery ball I want to show everybody. I got this from a friend when I retired. I don't know if you can see that, but that's Heine Groh's signature. Well, you can't see it, but he died in 1968. So that's one clue. We have no idea where this ball came from. Another clue is a score. Of course, I can't see it. Oh, here, there's a score on it. It says something. Looks like it says Toronto or Toledo 5 and Minnesota 4. And I can't read that either. But if it's Heine Groh, then Toronto wasn't a major league team in 1968 or before 1968. But why would they be playing Minnesota? If it is Minnesota, maybe it's Miami, but I couldn't find any Miami-Toronto league games where both those teams were in the same league. And then finally,
Actually, one was
It's
an
going to be
American
the
Association.
Minneapolis Millers.
But one was an American Association. Toronto was in the International League.
Yeah. So maybe there might have been a game.
it also says last ball pitched in something block in somewhere in Minnesota. Last ball pitched in Minnesota.
Did those two teams ever meet in the Little World,
World Series? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could look that up. And I tried to do some research in the MILB and I didn't really, sort of came to dead ends. But
I think it's from the same game as
yeah.
Robert.
Well, it does say last ball pitched. I mean, I guess, you know, well, obviously, I mean, I don't expect that you can read that, but that's my best reading of what it says. Last ball pitched in somewhere in Minnesota. The ball really got abused. I mean, they must have used it for batting practice or something. But
Hey, David, can you tell who's the ball manufacturer?
Well, that's that's long gone. Where would it be?
On the sweet spot, on one of the sweet spots.
Oh, those are,
That ball looks like this. It would have long disappeared.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing I thought was cool, and I have to thank Mark Armour for this, is I don't know if you guys saw the Amanda Gorman baseball cards. I bought a few of them, and I thought they were really cool. So, yeah, they were for like $10. I hear they're selling for more now. But anyway, so that's my mystery ball. And I am retired, so I guess I have time to look.
If I can go next, I have also a
Hey, can I
last
just say
ball.
one thing? So let me interrupt. Does anybody think the umpiring is much worse this year than in prior
Yes.
years?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I thought maybe it was just me. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry, Kate.
No problem. I'm Kit Krieger. I'm in Vancouver, longest defended border in the world, I guess now, between our countries. And my interest is Cuban baseball for 20 years, and one of the what we call Cubalistas. Neil was on one of my tours years ago. So I've been taking tours there since 2001, now interrupted because of both Trump policies carried on by Biden and the pandemic. But I collect Cuban memorabilia, and my research that I've been doing lately is related to the birthplaces of Cuban ball players. When I look at cross-referencing baseball reference, some work done by a group of, they call themselves SABR members, not a chapter because of some legal problems with SABR having a chapter in Havana. But they're a group of people who've been involved in locating grave sites. They think they found Cristobal Torriente's remains in Havana, and they found Bayan, the first Cuban from the National Association, the great group. So I've been trying to confirm where players were born and when they were born, because of tremendous discrepancy between baseball reference and Cuban sources, and even the programs and yearbooks I have from the Cuban Winter League. So I'm trying to arrive at some common information and and my friends in Cuba who have access to the Cuban National Library and statistics are working on that, but the recent situation is slowing some of that down. But I think my prized possession, other than this, I have a collection of the largest collection of Kit Krieger baseball memorabilia, because I pitched one game in the Coast League in 1968, but I tried to sell it at auction. It's going to a garage sale, I think, as a next step. But this is a baseball that I got from the estate of Hank Izquierdo, who was the last catcher for the Havana Sugar Kings. And it was signed by the team in 1960 and inscribed in the sweet spot where Izquierdo and others signed it. It says, Cuban Sugar Kings, Último Juego de los Cubanos. So it's the last game played by the Sugar Kings. And he had everybody sign the ball. And most Cuban memorabilia is in very bad shape because of the humidity and the lack of sort of conservation techniques. He lived in Florida. He didn't return to Cuba after the revolution. And it's in very good shape. And I also have a ball, part of the collection was a ball signed by the Jersey City team, which I think they were called the Jerseys. I'm wrong, but they actually pasted a cut on front of their old uniforms, and they played in Jersey City in 1960 and again in 1961. So I got both balls signed by that team, and some of the players didn't make the trip. They stayed behind in Cuba. So there's some different folks there. By the way, two members of the Sugar Kings still left in Cuba. One is Andreas Ion, the Mexican League Hall of Famer, and he has had a stroke recently and not doing very well. And the other is Luis Zayas, who's got a Northwest history because he played with the championship team, I think, in Lewiston, Wenatchee in 1957, and he had his ring that I think Dave Eskenazi purchased. And Zayas is 83 and a very good friend in Cuba. So that's my research stuff, and that's I have trying to get. Connie Marrero was a very close friend in the last, I guess, almost 15 years of life. And I almost had his remains. His grandson wanted to give me his remains. I declined because I thought he'd stayed in Cuba purposely after he died, and I thought it was not a good thing for him to come to Vancouver. But so I've got a large collection of Connie Marrero's photos and some of his documents from career contracts, things like that.
Do you have any material from the early Cuban X teams?
No,
1905.
so the very, I focus on the Cuban Winter League and the Cuban, there was a SABR Neto, who was a Cuban historian, passed away long ago, biographer Morero, and he did work on Negro Leaguers in Cuba. And some I think has been published. I haven't seen the latest. I brought some material that he had back for SABR 10 or 15 years ago. But no, I don't, there's one guy in Cuba who is the foremost collector. He has everything, but he knows market, very tough to get it. And I just don't have the resources to get into that material.
Well, researching these Army games, the U.S. military playing the Cubans, the Filipinos. In 1902, 1903, I mean, they were playing the Cuban teams, the 9th Cav and the U.S. forces down there. So, and then of course in Puerto Rico. So I've kind of run across this stuff in newspaper stories and in some of the stuff I've been given access to. It's really interesting. I'd like to learn a lot more about the early Cuban players that played against the early Negro guys, like, you know, the Philadelphia Giants and the Brooklyn Royal Giants and some of those really early pre-1910 games, because they seem kind of fascinating, really. Those guys are great players, I have to tell you that.
I'll take to the Cuban Hall of Fame, which has been resurrected. Very big political football in Cuba because the Castro regime did not recognize the importance of pre-revolutionary Cuban baseball, and a group of, including a couple of SABR members, tried to revive the Hall of Fame, which actually morphed into a Hall of Fame elected by the exile community in Florida, and that was very contentious. But the Hall of Fame was established in 1939, that is located at the ballpark in Havana where the Industriales play, the old stadium in Cerro. Most of the players got, you look at the stats, and first of all, very short season from the 1878 first season into the 20s. They sometimes put some seasons under 10 games, and the career averages, they're 125 hitters who made the Hall of Fame. And they all got in because they were revolutionaries. Baseball played a major role in the Cuban Revolution, and it was a sign of being anti-colonial and anti-Spanish. And it's one of the odder Hall of Fames in baseball.
Interesting.
Hey, David, I just looked up the fact Heine Manouche did play for Toronto in 38 and 39. So that might be a starting point for you.
Heine
Grove.
Oh, Grove. Okay. All right. Well,
He died.
maybe Heine Manouche is on there somewhere. It's a collection of Heinies.
That's the famous bottle ball, isn't it?
Bottle bat. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all Heine's.
Hi.
See what I can find on Heine Grove in his minor league career. He would have been gone by 38 playing. He started in 1912. Looks like he's in Binghamton, New York in 1932. It's the only minor league statistic that shows in his, see, he would have a bio as well, so maybe he managed. He was a pretty, yeah, here he is. Go ahead and I'll let you know if I find something here.
How you doing, Rick?
Oh, I've had great trouble getting on here. Been trying for like an hour.
Really?
But I'm pretty computer ignorant, so.
Oops. Well, if nobody else is going to jump in, I'll show one or two things. I actually am a transplant to the Northwest, although I've been here 43 years. But I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. And the Little League that I played in Stamford, Connecticut, the speaker at our Little League dinner every year was one of the two sports stars who lived in Stamford. And
Bobby Valentine, I bet.
Bobby Valentine I played against in high school. But one of them was Jackie Robinson, and the other was Andy Robustelli, the football player. They both lived in Stamford. So I had, as a kid, a copy of the I don't know if this is the original, but the baseball, the big league baseball library version of the Jackie Robinson story as a kid. And I did get this autographed by Jackie when I I saw him when I was living there, and actually played against his son Jackie Jr. in Babe Ruth League. But who was, I think he was a year older than I was. I'm right of that vintage. And I was also going to show, since somebody mentioned Dave Baldwin, who I know has been a chapter member in the past, and we know Dave not only was a major league pitcher, but a scientist, and 2 master's degrees and a PhD, and has written on all kinds of things, as well as painted pictures and has paintings hanging in museums, and has written poetry. I mean, he's the ultimate Renaissance man. But Dave lives down in Yachats, Oregon, and I've become very good friends with him. And in fact, we're on an every other week Zoom call together. But Dave has a town ball team in Yachats called the Smelt. This is their cap. The Yachats Smelt. And the Yachats, if you don't know, is a town right on about the middle of the coastline in Oregon. It's a town of a little under 700 people. But Dave decided they needed a town baseball team, and so he kind of underwrote the cost of the caps, and they would get together and play on that field. And a couple of us from up here in Seattle, Eric Salee and I, have gone down and played with the Smelt when we visited Dave. So it's a lot of fun, and Dave is doing great, by the way. So he is still a gem. I think most of you know, I spent about 24 years working with the Mariners, either as their outside counsel or as their in-house general counsel, and so my passion for baseball got at least a little bit of professional outlet along the way. But I grew up in Connecticut as a Yankee fan, which I outgrew shortly after moving to Seattle, fortunately, and I'm a rank amateur collector, mostly baseball cards, because I had a zillion old baseball cards, and since I've retired, one of my projects has been to try to fill in all the gaps in my baseball card collection, which, for those of you who are collectors know, it's an infinite number of gaps that you have because there's so many different things now. But I decided to focus just on Topps, and I have every Topps card since 1955. And I just finished my 1955 set with a friend of mine donating the Roberto Clemente rookie card, which I was not going to buy. So, but it's just a passion, and it's been great fun, and love participating in these.
If I could jump in there, Bart, because you said a few things that makes me that I kind of wanted to respond to. I hope you were. Did I interrupt you, Bart?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Josh Burstyn from Eugene, but like you, Bart, and a number of other people here, I'm an East Coast transplant now living in the Pacific Northwest. My wife grew up in Portland. But a quick story, I grew up in Queens. And when I was 5 years old in 1977 and learned what baseball was, I became a Mets fan, in part because I lived in Queens. And also because my mom was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan growing up. So when you mentioned Jackie Robinson, that was very meaningful to me. And I would grow up with her telling me stories about the Dodgers living in the neighborhood and Jackie Robinson. And she was born in 1936. So, she would tell me about 47 and 55. And of course, after they left. But anyway, the funny part there, and some of you know this already, is so I have 3 kids who are teenagers, a girl, a boy, and another girl. And the 3 of them, it's not my son, it's my youngest daughter who got interested in baseball. So I thought it was really kind of a sweet thing, whereas my mom, not my dad, giving it to me, and then me giving it to my daughter, not my son, kind of the reverse of what quote is supposed to be, if you will, and all that. So I have a big interest in women in baseball. And so I have a weird thing to show you. Let me see if I can hold it up. Sorry for the glare. So this was a Eugene Emeralds game in 2018. I went with my daughter, who then was, let's see, she was born in 07, so she was 11. And there was a woman named Emma Charlesworth Seiler, who some of you may know or have heard of. She is one of a couple of women who are umpires in minor league baseball. And she was one of the umpires at this game. I just looked her up. She's now doing High A Central this year. and it was the Emeralds hosting the Boise Hawks. And so I got, after the game, I got her to autograph. I didn't have anything else with me. This was just like the sheet they gave out, you know, with the starting lineup. But I had her autograph it. And then up here, I don't know if you could tell, let's see if I can move it closer, but the pitching coach for the Boise Hawks at the time, I think I don't know if he's still there, Bob Apodaca, who, as you may know, was on the Mets in the 70s when I first became a Mets fan. And I remember I actually had to chase after him because him and the players were heading to the bus after the game. I started running after him, and my daughter was kind of thinks I'm crazy. You know, we had just met Emma Charles Recital and had her sign it after the game. And I said, Mr. Apodaca, I just want to say I'm a Mets fan from before. Would you sign this for me? And he stopped and looked at me, kind of gruff, and said, Mets fans never forget. I'm not sure what that means, because we try to forget a lot of our history, if you will. But anyway, in 1986, I was at the World Series Game 7, which was great. I wish I'd been there at Game 6, and forgive any Red Sox fans out there. I was 14 years old, and it's kind of the pinnacle of my biggest baseball memory, of course, when they won. But fast forward a bunch of years later, probably about 4 years ago, too soon, John. Mark says too soon to give up on the Mets. I don't know. But fast forward a couple of years ago, and Bill Buckner, who obviously should be remembered for a lot more than just that one game, but was doing a tour here in the West and Northwest for Mobil Oil or some oil company, kind of weird. And they had brought him to minor league towns around here. And so he was here appearing in Eugene. And I got my family up early on a Saturday morning and said, we got to go. There's going to be a line. I mean, I guess I was a little stupid or something. There was no one in line. They hadn't even set the tent out yet, outside. It was outside of Bi-Mart, which for those of you who know Oregon, it's like a local chain drugstore, novelty store, clothing store. Anyway, and I had brought his cards, and I had brought my daughter. I have this great picture of me and my little daughter, who at this point was probably 10 maybe. And it was weird. He seemed very off. And this was probably a year or two before he passed away. And my thought at the time was either he had been up real late the night before, or he hadn't gotten much sleep, or was on drugs, or I didn't know why. And then we later learned when he died, shortly thereafter, that he had something called Lewy body dementia. Or it's like a memory care. Someone had mentioned memory care before. I think that was the one he had. That's what I know more about because my mother-in-law had it. But anyway, long story short, I have this picture of my little daughter and me and Bill Buckner, many years after 1986. It's kind of a weird memory, but meaningful to me. So anyway, that story ties together a lot of unusual things: Jackie Robinson and the Dodgers and Mets and women in baseball and all that. But I want to kind of share it all together.
Thanks. Bob Webster, you may want to jump in here, but I know that Isla Borders is throwing out the first pitch at a Hops game sometime at the end of the month. I don't have the exact date in my memory there.
Who is?
Isla Borders.
Borders.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's before the game, like at 5 o'clock or something like that, there's some kind of a women in sports seminar or meeting or something like that going on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I will look that up and figure out.
She was one of my favorite Portland guests.
Yeah,
we've had. I mean, she was really great that day.
Yeah, that was a real coup to get her to accept my invitation. Cold called her to accept that to come to that. And I was at the board meeting of one of my other groups, a coalition of advocates for equal access for girls, and we were using my phone as a remote connection to somebody else. And so at the end of the meeting, I turned it off, and I saw her acceptance, and I was all excited. And the other people didn't know who she was at all, but and I had to tell her, she's a real pioneer. She's great, that was really nice. Yeah, she is great too.
Isla Borders, it'll be July 29th. She'll be a guest speaker for women in sports and events. and from 5 to 6, and then the game time 7:05.
There you go.
Yeah, 29.
At that SABR meeting, I convinced her to let me write her SABR biography.
Nice.
Haven't done
Wow.
it. I feel so damn bad too, because I committed to so many biographies and game stories for SABR books that I had to get those done, and that was one of them that's still on the back burner. And I don't think I could do it now. I can't contact her and say, hey, remember a few years ago, you mentioned I would write your biography?
Her own,
I think she'd be cool. I think
her own autobiography is well worth reading if you haven't read it.
Oh yeah, I have it on the show.
And she's been connected to, she did some charity work for Girls Inc. And at that time, Girls Inc. I was on the board of with the chair of Girls Inc., the same board at that meeting there. And so I told her I wanted to recruit her to come and do a lot of stuff. So she's real busy.
Was it in San Diego that?
Yeah. She was in San Diego.
You may have actually helped with that, because she just seems like she loves SABR now. And I think it may have started with that call. Well,
boy, if I had any small part to do that, that would make me really happy, because I just cold called her, and emailed her, and she accepted. When she accepted, that was really nice. Yeah.
So, can I jump in right now?
Yes, you can.
Okay, my name is Robert Kiyoshi Shadlow. I was born in Japan and came here when I was 5 years old to the States. So my grandma would send these magazines and books from Japan about Japanese baseball. At the same time, my mom was cutting up the Post baseball cards from the Post cereal, and I connected those two, O and Nagashima, Maris, Mays, and that's where I started my love for baseball, because it was true. And then from Japanese baseball, I started following Caribbean baseball, Latin American baseball, and in '69 Negro League baseball, and I really, and then more recently, last 30 years, Korean and Taiwanese baseball. But baseball, all those stuff. I think the Negro Leagues really are an important part, because since they didn't have access to, Major League Baseball, they were touring everywhere. The players were, playing everywhere, Latin America and Japan. So one project I'm working on now, Rob Fiss, he's an author. He's putting together a SABR book on all the Japanese U.S. tours of Japan, including the Royal Giants. And my chapter, everybody got to pick a different chapter, and mine was, what was left over was the '78 Cincinnati tour, the Big Red Machine tour of Japan. And that'll be my chapter. And another chapter, a thing I'd like to work on is, a few years ago, the guy named David Block, have you heard of him? He had a book on the history of baseball, origins of baseball. And so that was a really good thing. But where I want to go is, just as baseball evolved in the United States and Canada and Latin America, baseball continued to evolve in England and the British Isles. It went a different direction. Just like in the United States, you had the Massachusetts game, the New York game, you had all these different games. In Britain, they continued on and kind of merged with rounders and different things like that. And it's pretty much dying off. But I think the project I like to work on is see how, baseball just didn't stop with the American game. It kept going on and was influenced by the American game, going back to Britain in the late 1800s. And so that's what I really look forward to. My collectible, I don't know if you can see it. Oh, where's the camera? There. It's a baseball card not a well-known player. He played only about 200 games in Japan. Japanese American, Sam Yuchio. And, but I met him about 30 years ago. And what was fascinating about him is he told me about one league in Japan in 1947 that tried to go against the regular Japanese league, but the players were blacklisted if they didn't, quit playing. So that rival league only lasted 30 years. But also Sam Yuchio, this guy, he had two teammates, the first two Negro League players to go to Japan with the Hankyu Braves was Jimmy Newberry and Johnny Britton. And I don't know if you've heard those guys, but he told fascinating stories. Like John Britton was not very friendly. He didn't want to be there, because he was used to, being a big star in the Negro Leagues. And where Jimmy Newberry, he was really friendly and he really got into it. And that continues on to this day. If you see American players who go to Japan, some of them, love it. And then there's other ones who just hate it, So anyway, sorry I took up so long. Thank you for inviting me.
So you're always welcome.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You talked about the evolution of the game in England. There was, gosh, this must be 15 or 20 years ago. ESPN, I think it was ESPN that did maybe an hour-long exploration of the origins of baseball, and I'm sure they had John Thorne on and others. But they also went back to England, and they showed rounders being played. They showed various games in the back of bars that you'd have a couple of beers and you go out behind the bar and play a game. And I don't, it seems to me, I would love if somebody did a legacy tour of England, exploring the roots of baseball in England. Has anybody ever heard of anything like that? I mean, I'd pay a fortune to go do something like that. That was just dedicated to exploring the roots of our game in England, and obviously you get some of the pub culture as part of that.
Yeah, because the word baseball, I think it goes back at least to the 1700s, the actual term baseball. And but I don't know, if you look up David Block, he has a good book on the history. And I think he went to England. I don't know if he did a tour, but but right now baseball in England is really overshadowed by cricket.
Right.
Because cricket organized and cricket had the money, in the 1800s, that's when all the major sports were forming, after the Industrial Revolution. So cricket and baseball in America kind of overshadow, the native baseball in the British Isles.
Yeah.
So what's left right now in Britain is Welsh baseball. And they have a bat, like a flat bat, but slanted at the top. And then you have English rounders, which has a club. And then you have, what's the other one? Gaelic baseball. Gaelic baseball uses a bat like we do here, but it's called, So those are the three sports that are left over, but it's being overshadowed by, again, cricket and, organized baseball.
So the World Amateur Baseball Championship was played intermittently between 1938 and 2011. There were some gaps for reasons I don't know. And then finally, the World Baseball Classic, once it came into place, it ended. But the first championship was played in 1938 in Britain, between the United States and Britain, the only teams that was played, it was baseball. And next year it was in Havana. In fact, 3 or 4 years in a row in Havana. That most famous game in baseball history in Cuba was a 1941 game between Venezuela and Cuba, where Marrero lost the game. And he was angry about it. He was 104, 102, I guess.
I think that Northanger Abbey, the book by Jane Austen, has a mention of the term baseball and it might be the first mention of that.
I'm sure John Thorne would know of something that was.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Shakespeare had something about foul balls, fair balls, and foul. I can't remember the different lines.
Robert, if I could ask a question too. My wife, although she grew up in Oregon, like I said before, actually was born in Australia and at different times lived in Tokyo and Hong Kong. And my middle child, my son, who's not interested in baseball, but is 15, is very interested in Japan. He's taking Japanese in school and all. And so our household's talking a lot about the Olympics. And I'm wondering, are you following what's going on right now with baseball in Japan and the Olympics? And I know I don't see as much press on it here in the US. I know there are 6 teams. I actually was on a Zoom talk where I heard the head of USA Baseball and the head of Israel Baseball, talking about, because they're 2 of the 6 teams. Japan is one, South Korea is one. But is there, I know it's always been popular there. Do you still follow it, like present day Japanese baseball, and kind of what's the take with the Olympics now?
Well, it's like somebody mentioned earlier, there'll be no crowd. And there's been most Japanese they think they should just bag the Olympics. It's just costing too much money, and people are just going to lose so much money. But the Olympic IOC, they want it to keep going. And baseball fans want it to happen because baseball hasn't been in the Olympics since 2008. So, and the Japanese team, they always take things seriously, whether it's World Baseball Classic or Olympics. So they're geared up. They're practicing like crazy. The American team, I think they're playing against college teams stateside right now. So I think it's who's the 4 teams. The first 4 teams were determined by the Premier 12, which is the big baseball event they had, I think is in 2020. So that was Japan, Korea, Mexico, and somehow Israel. Well, Israel, they have a lot of ringers, like Kinsler and guys like that. So, and then the 2 teams that had to earn their way this year were the US and Dominican. So unfortunately for the US, most of the players will be AAA, AA players, and Dominican, same thing. But they have a chance. Korean, but I'd have to say Korea or Japan should take it, because their pro leagues are going to shut down for the Olympics, so to allow their players.
According to a website I'm on, Japan was ranked 1, USA 2, and Korea 3.
Yeah.
Then Dominican 10, Israel 18, and Cuba didn't qualify. It was in fact, I wonder how much it informs the street revolts. It was this very, very bitter contempt for the organization that has plunged Cuban baseball into the Netherlands. It's
I actually worked the '96 Olympics in Atlanta, and it's a funny story. We played 32 games in 12 days. When Atlanta got the bid in 1990, they kind of saw baseball as a throw-in sport, and so they were one of the cheapest tickets planned for the games. They also decided at that time that the baseball venue could host the Olympic athletes prior to opening and closing ceremonies. What they didn't realize was that the Atlanta Braves would win the World Series in 1995. They also didn't realize that baseball, apple pie, very American, people are going to want to go to a baseball game. So they also weren't prepared for Fulton County, the city of Atlanta, and Ted Turner to not all be on the same page. So it was quite the adventure. I was in venue management. The 3 cool experiences from that was that I got to, my boss would page me back then when they had pagers, and he'd say, go to section 130, row 2 or something. And I thought there was an emergency. And it was always his way to get me to go see some baseball. And every time it would be 3 up, 3 down. It never failed. It was just the way it was. But one game, a friend of mine from CBS Sports was there, and my boss said, "Go see him. Go say hi." And he was sitting way up in the right field seats, and I got to sit next to him, and I saw 4 home runs back to back, which I don't think I'd ever seen before. So that was a pretty cool thing. The other thing, which Kit will find interesting, is that we almost ran out of baseballs. And the reason we almost ran out of baseballs is the Cuban players were stealing them and then charging fans $20 for an autograph. And they also took our Coca-Cola tables. I mean, it was quite the adventure. So that was interesting.
That was a very great team. Versus Kimberland, I think, hit big
Oh,
home
yeah.
runs. Omar
Very
Lamar
cool
was on the
team.
team.
And they were
right?
powerful, and they were great to watch.
They won the gold. It was great team.
Yeah, but the last 2 things, we got all the athletes into closing ceremonies, and I fell asleep and I woke up listening to Ray Charles. So that's how tired we were. But the coolest, and I don't have it out, but one of the coolest baseball memorabilia items that I have, that Sunday was a really weird day for me. I got to meet my mentor, a guy named George Hill, who's actually from Port Angeles. I got to meet him for lunch. It was a really magical day. But I was still using my parking spot at Fulton County Stadium, and this guy that I hadn't seen, he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad to track you down. I have something for you." And so I have a baseball that has an embroidered 1996 Atlanta Olympic logo. It means nothing to anybody, and it would probably sell for a negative 10 cents on eBay, but it means a great deal to me that this gentleman that I worked with, took the time to give me one of the last ones. But it was a wild experience, and of all the stuff I've done in my lifetime, I have such fond memories of those exhausting. I mean, we dumped that stadium 3 times a day, and it was crazy. It was just, and at one point they said, "We are not selling any more baseball tickets. We've sold too many." We literally paid the swimming venue to keep, well, I shouldn't say that we paid them. That would be what would be the right thing to say. We encouraged the swimming venue to keep President Clinton, because what happens at these events is once you lose, there's a hierarchy for security. And, once you get to that level, Secret Service takes over. So, and then the other thing that was very funny was President Castro did not come to the event, but his brother did. And Fulton County Stadium was one of the first stadiums that was non-smoking. And unfortunately, he did not believe in non-smoking and liked to smoke, in particular Cuban cigars. And so when they told him that he couldn't smoke, he offered people cigars. That was his response. So I mean, whatever works for you, I guess. But it was very funny that, no, you can't smoke here. Here's a cigar. Here's a cigar. So anyway, and while I'm talking, and I'll shut up after this, you guys were talking about memorabilia. I'm currently reading Maybe I'll Pitch Forever by Satchel Paige. And the reason I'm rereading it is it's an old version of the book that my friend found while cleaning out his dad's house. And I read the book years ago. And I've just been reading a few pages each night. And, I always joke that Satchel is my guardian angel. And it's so fascinating what joy he had for the game. So it's really cool to see that and feel that again. And then lastly, I don't know if I'll be able to show this or not. I'm having some. This is the 1997 Charlotte Knights card set. I was the PR director for the AAA Knights at that time. They were the AAA club for the Marlins, and back then you were given a template, and then the media relations group took care of wrote those cards. And we had Don Paul, Russ Mormons on here, Levon Hernandez, who I happen to share a birthday with. But a lot of those guys, we had 130 transactions that year, so a lot of these guys all ended up with a ring, which was very cool. Antonio Alfonseca is on here. He did. But what I always remember is when these cards were getting ready to come out, I happened to have been on a road trip with the team to Ohio, and Don Paul, the former Chicago White Sox pitcher, was always very nice to me. And at that time, there weren't a lot of women. In fact, I think I was the only woman doing my job. And they kept calling him the Pope, and I just didn't get it. And I said, "Why do they call you the Pope?" And he goes, "Don Paul." So I'm like, "Oh, John Paul, Don Paul." So I'm actually getting another one of these reframed because this one wasn't. But whenever I see his picture, I think of Rome, and I think of the Pope. So anyway, kind of silly. But I'm actually in Covington, Kentucky, and my camera's been going out. We've been having some bad storms, but the Reds are playing good ball again, or they've actually are playing our host Brewers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that series. I live about 1.2 miles from the ballpark, so I actually can hear when the team hits home runs, which is pretty cool. I hear the stacks go off. But they've had an interesting season. So, but if you come out this way, let me know and I'll take you to a game.
Missy, I thought the 96 Olympics, Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was actually Olympic Stadium and had a track.
No, so that's the funny part of the whole story. So Ted Turner wasn't a big fan of the whole Olympic process. So there was Fulton County Stadium, there was the Braves, there was the county, and then they built the Olympic Stadium, which eventually became the Braves Stadium. So credentialing, navigating who was in charge, it was quite the and Jim Brown was our venue manager, and Jim went to work for FIFA, and he's just a really cool cat. I mean, he was so graceful in how he handled things, really prevented a lot of stuff. What was really fascinating, that was the first time in my life that I'd ever, sadly, there was the bombing that happened. And prior to the opening of the games, they do a sweep of the venue, right? I'm sure the Mariners they go through and they check things with dogs and all those different things. And after the bombing, they had to do another sweep again. And what was so fascinating about it was, they always talk about, with organizations having a disaster recovery plan. And this is kind of morbid, but to see it in place and to see it in action, I was so impressed by the military, so impressed by the order of hierarchy for the security groups and how they handled that. I was quite a bit younger, but it was very impressive to see. So quite the the Braves aren't even at Olympic Stadium anymore, which is wild to me. They barely paid their 21 years, I think it was, so 22. So
your comment about Ted Turner's attitude toward Olympics is interesting because wasn't he behind the Goodwill Games were played in Seattle, which was
that's what's so interesting about it. I think in many ways
an anti-Olympic.
Did a lot of positives. I just know that so for the credentialing process for these types of events, you're rated 1, 2, 3, or 4. I mean, it might be different now, but at the other events I've worked, so if you're a 4, you get your credential, you've got a background check, you're okay. You have a 3, you have something in your background, but they're going to let you work. I don't know, maybe credit, I don't know. You're okay. If you have a 2, you're not going to work. They're just not going to grant you a credential, and you're not going to be able to work the games. And that includes volunteers. If you're a 1, they're basically going to say to you, hey, come on, pick up your credential and we're going to take you away. I mean, and so because there was the county, because there were the Braves, because there were it was just a lot, not to mention the facts, the Braves, if I recall correctly, the Braves played up until just a few days before we took a hold of the stadium. And so it was a unique thing. The Braves people were very nice. It was an interesting experience. So, and I do hope, the U.S. is able to, have a good run this year. My favorite trivia question is that who caught the final out in 1988? Do you guys know the answer to that for the U.S.?
88.
Yeah.
Was that
Dave
Seoul? What was
Silvestri
88?
from the University of Missouri. Go Tigers. So if anybody ever asked, he caught the final out. So.
Where was 88? Was that Seoul?
Seoul. Yeah.
Bradley?
Bill Bradley?
Yeah. No, no, but what's funny is Dave got his glove. I remember he was talking about his glove, and he got it from I'm gonna say the name wrong. Is it Ray Quinones?
Ray Quinones.
From Seattle. He threw something through a fill. I remember him talking about that. But yeah, I just he was such a cool guy at Mizzou, so that was neat that he got the final out. Because that team was loaded. That team was, I think, what was it, 24? The guy, like, didn't all but a couple guys make the big leagues?
So Melissa, when you were in Atlanta at the time, Stan Kasten had quite a bit to do with building that Olympic Stadium, right?
I think so. That whole thing was really weird. And like I said, I just wanted to work the Olympics. That's really what I wanted to do. And I ended up in the venue management side, but I really wanted to be like in PR or media. So it was just I was really in an operations role. So it was a very different experience. I do know that, like I said, Jim Brown, our venue manager, just was fantastic, and jumping the hoops of the county, the Braves, the state, the committee, it was really it was fascinating with that. And I want to say Sherholtz, even though he was on the ops side, that he had some involvement as well, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I wrote Kasten's biography for 95 Braves, and how he had a lot to do with building that ballpark.
What's funny is people didn't like that ballpark, but it was pretty cool. I thought it was cool, and I did get to go to games there. Last time I was there was in 12, but it was a pretty neat stadium, I've heard their new ballpark is beautiful, but I don't know if you guys have been. Everybody wants to be downtown.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, yeah.
Changing the subject, but regarding a chapter, it seems as though we've been picking up quite a few new members in the Pacific Northwest, and have they reached out, or we reached out to them, notified them of this kind of event, or are we just relying that they'll find it if they're signed up on the SABR?
Everyone who joins gets a welcoming email from me, and I know we accept the only exception when those 16 people from Walla Walla, Washington, who were all students at Walla Walla U, they all had wallawalla.edu. I just wrote one to, I sent the same one to all of them. And I asked them, are you guys in a class? Who are you? And I never got an answer. So we had two members from Walla Walla prior to that. They were both history professors. One was from Whitman University, and the other was from Walla Walla University. So I think it was tied in to that. Our chapter has except for probably the chapters in Japan or Great Britain or Nepal, our chapter has the largest geographical footprint of any of the chapters there.
The Russia chapter, probably.
Yeah, the Antarctic chapter, the Australian chapter is probably the one, but in terms of because we span, and I think I counted, we span, there's American League, there's the PCL, there's the Pioneer League, there's the Northwest League, there's the West Coast League, there's the Mavericks League, all these different leagues and stuff. So
plus all the colleges, plus the JUCOs.
The college, Alaska League.
Yeah, the Alaska League too. So, in that sense, we're unique. And one of the things, my goal in doing these meetings is to welcome people from all over when somebody joins from Prince George, BC, I welcome them to this, and I think, and sometimes people from Idaho say, well, when are we going to have a meeting in Idaho? And I say, well, if you want to organize something, we'll do it, but this has been the Zoom meetings have been a godsend. And my goal is to make everyone feel welcome and to try to continue to include people in the chapter's business and make them feel welcome.
Well, it's
So-
fantastic. I mean,
Yeah, I
as
really
someone that's
appreciate
trying to get onto another, I can't even get a response from the people in Cincinnati. So this is fantastic. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think we need a meeting in Sun Valley in February.
Yeah. Well, if you want to organize it, we'll do it. So it looks like people are leaving here. I think maybe we've come to a stopping point.
Well, I thank you all.
Any final thoughts? Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, just just my final thought is August 10th is the true 50th anniversary of the beginning of SABR. So I hope everybody, I know there's a program at 4 p.m. our time, SABR.
Summer of SABR.
Yes, Summer of SABR. The Mariners are also in town playing the Rangers at 7:10 p.m. So it might be a good night to take in a baseball game. But anyway, I hope everybody does something special to commemorate the anniversary, the true anniversary.
That's a great reminder.
So Googler that I am, I have the rosters of both the 1988 and 1996 U.S. baseball team in the Olympics, if you want to know.
Ooh.
Okay.
88 was stacked with guys that made it to the big
88
leagues.
is Ty Griffin, Brett Barbary, Mike Fiore, Robin Ventura, Tino Martinez, Ted Wood, Jeff Branson, Billy Mass, I don't know who he is, Tom Goodwin, Ed Sprague, Mickey Morandini, Dave Silvestri, Doug Robbins, not one I know, Scott Service, Jim Abbott,
Yep, little pitcher.
Andy Dennis, Ben McDonald, Mike Milchin, Charles Nagy, and Joe Slusarski.
Those are a few good ball players.
You're no kidding.
96.
Nagy, I always forget Nagy. Branson got a World Series ring with the Reds 2 years after 88. He was in the big leagues. And Ventura, I mean, he attacked Nolan Ryan and then became a manager and was a pretty good player.
I was in the ballpark for Mickey Morandini's unassisted triple play in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And then 1996, R.A. Dickey, Warren Morris, Augie Ojeda, I don't know who that is, Mark Kotze, Jason Williams, Chad Allen, Chad Green, Kip Harkrider, Braden Looper, Travis Lee, A.J. Hinch, Jacques Jones, Brian Lloyd, Troy Glaus, Seth Greisinger, Matt LaCroix, Chris Benson, Jim Park, Jeff Weaver, Billy Koch.
Pretty
Jim
good team.
Parquet, Jim Parquet lives here in the Northwest and runs a baseball academy down in Puyallup.
Great. So that's my trivia for you.
There you go. Go USA. Like I said, maybe they'll do well, and go Reds, beat the Brewers.
Okay.
We're due. You guys have had all the good. We're due to get some people back. Have a good night.
Bob, thanks for organizing this.
Okay, I'll do it again. I'll set one up again for just a social meeting like this. Okay.
Do it.
A couple months. Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay.
Buenas noches.